Hey everyone, Walter Crosby with Helix Sales Development, your host of Sales and Cigars. Today's episode, I've been looking forward to this because I had a great conversation with Patrick the first time we chatted. Like it was like two sales guys who have a lot in common, and we just hit it off. And he's got several books that he's self-published. We're going to talk about one of those called "Sell the Difference." But we get into some really unique coaching ideas that Patrick brings to the table and being able to draw things out. He tells a great story. He's from Chicago, so he tells a great story about Phil Jackson and Michael Jordan and how that epiphany happened where Jordan can be like, oh, I'm part of a team that all wants the same thing. And that was part of the downfall of the Pistons when that happened. So we talk about that. We talk about coaching. So go grab a cocktail, grab a cigar, strap in for another impactful episode of Sales and Cigars. So Patrick, welcome to Sales and Cigars, and thanks for taking some time to jump on the program.
Thank you, Walter. I'm glad to be here.
We do a little conversation before this a few weeks ago, and you were kind enough to reschedule for me because I had a personal challenge. So I really appreciate that. But I'm excited to have this conversation because that conversation flowed so naturally. So I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, me too.
So let's start off with, is there a book, is there something that you recommend to to business owners or to people that ask you, like, is there something that you recommend that they read besides one of yours?
Yeah. I'm not the only book out there. So there's an author that I'll recommend, Sean Akers. All of Sean Akers' stuff is really good. Big Potential, The Happiness Advantage.
I don't know him. Is that Sean with a SH or SEAN?
SH.
Okay.
And then also there's an author, his name is Kevin Keppel, Kepple. Yeah. And he's got a book that just came out. It's called Unlocking Your Freedom. And this is just a really good, easy read with a lot of information that's both strategic and tactical at the same time. So Kevin Keppel, Kepple, Unlocking Your Freedom.
Right. Yeah, I saw some of your social media promoting that, and I started poking around. So
it's a phenomenal read. It's so worth it. It's really power packed. I love it.
I like books that are just cut to the chase and give you some value, and that you don't have to go searching around with a stick to find the value in it. And
you know what I like about Kevin's book is that so it's relatable to a lot of folks, but you can reach this guy. So you have a question, you can reach him and he'll reach back. So it doesn't happen often with authors. Right. So he's very helpful in every way. So
yeah, it does happen, but it's rare. I've reached out a couple of big time authors, and they didn't call me back, 2 minutes later, but they got back to me in a few days, and because I posed a question that they thought was interesting, and those are always fun conversations.
Absolutely.
So those are two good. The author and both of those authors will put those in the notes too to share.
Perfect.
For folks. And we're going to get to your books in a minute, but let's talk a little bit about your journey. It's interesting. Like, I don't have to go back to kindergarten, but like, let's talk a little bit about how you got to where you are and why you wrote 3 books.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the point that stands out in my mind is being 17 years old and joining the Army back when Be All You Can Be came out. And so I grew up in very humble household. When I look back now, we were pretty poor, is what it was.
We didn't know, right?
We didn't know. I thought everybody was like that. Exactly. And so I was paying a lot of the household bills. I went to parochial school, so I paid the tuition for myself and my sisters. they got to the point where it was time to go to college, and I didn't have anything saved because I was contributing to what was right in front of me. And the infantry offered that they would pay for college if you joined the infantry. The reintroduction of what used to be the GI Bill.
Yeah, yeah.
So I joined the military, and what's interesting is it's a great environment to help bring out the best in people. And it was at a time when Ronald Reagan was the president, and there was a lot of hot zones in the world, and there's a lot of fear of, as a 17-year-old, going off to war. And so there was a lot of fear of that, but there's also the greater reward. I get to go to college. And the nice thing was that the military put me at a young age in charge of platoons, lots of expensive equipment, lots of weaponry, lots of people. And I learned a lot about working within a group of folks, and then also leading people through situations where, lives are on the line. It's good that in corporate America, that isn't the case.
Right.
And so it was great to reinforce that the harder you work, the more you'll move up, and the greater things that can happen to you. But it also, as time goes on, as you fast forward and you make it through college and you get on with your life and you get into corporate America, you learn that it's more than just hard work that advances you. So the lessons I learned earlier, that it's what you do that gets you further, became more about it's what you do differently that can advance you further. And that's really, where everything began, where the lessons were being taught, and what led me on my journey. You mentioned my book. The title of the book is called Sell the Difference. And I just found that I was learning lots of lessons about differentiation, how important that is in leadership, how important that is in communicating with groups, and how important it is just being a father or a brother or a neighbor. Or differentiation is really what makes the world go round. So that's really the starting point. And that's, what I learned to carry forward.
There's a dichotomy there, though, right? If you started off 17, 18 years old and joined the military to be all you could be, they didn't embrace difference in the military.
Well, the military doesn't embrace difference. The military has uniformity. So I was learning uniformity rules. That the higher achiever I was, the higher I moved up the ranks. Then that doesn't always translate into corporate America. And that's what I'm saying. When I moved out beyond the military into corporate world, I had to relearn. I had to look back on what I did learn and realize that it wasn't just what I accomplished that moved me along. It's what I did differently. And it was growing pains, because you try to apply what you were doing as a soldier and it doesn't work. And you either keep trying that, you keep running into the wall, hoping it turns into a door, or you stop and reevaluate and reassess and say, you know what? When I did things differently, when I made a difference, when I became a category of one to that person, better things happened. And so I started relooking at the fact that you can be a high achiever and do it through your differentiation. So no, one did not translate to the other. You're absolutely right.
And that, I mean, first off, thanks for your service. And
You're welcome.
That has to be there were a lot of hot zones around the country. There wasn't huge conflicts, but there were significant conflicts that needed to be dealt with, and Ronnie dealt with them. You guys had resources, I would think, probably more so than other times. Was that accurate, or is my interpretation way off?
I mean, your interpretation of us having resources and Ronald Reagan handling it correctly, I would say historically is correct. I mean, you'd have to take yourself back in time. The internet didn't exist. This was 1983. We're at the height of a different Cold War with Russia. They were a superpower. Lots of fear around that.
Yeah.
And the whole concept of we're the biggest top on the block, America, North America, puts you in a position where you're expected to answer many different calls to action. So as a 17-year-old who, like I said, grew up in a humble household, this is a whole new world for me. And there was definitely fear that this would happen. And when you look back, the avoidance of all the Star Wars and all the things that could have happened was good, and it turned out to be okay. So I was fortunate that I didn't have to go and fight in a different country or even in my own country in that respect.
Yeah.
So I
But
would say that. Go ahead.
I'm just, there's a dichotomy there, but there's something similar to the differences you encountered in corporate America. And I don't want to go too deep, and I don't want to get into politics, but I'm the same age, right? And I didn't join the military. Almost became a Marine, which would have been probably bad for them and me, worse for me. But because I at that age I was not good with confines and given lots of direction and being told what to do basically. So it probably wouldn't have been a good fit. But my point is that you learned the things that you needed to learn how to manage people and deal with people and conduct that kind of business. But while that was going on, there was politics being handled at a higher level to position the country in a different way so that there was no long-term conflicts. Like we're just going to agree that we both can take each other out, and let's maintain that. And then when you get into corporate America, you have to go play that game. And I'm just wondering if there was a moment in that corporate world where you realized, oh, I got to be who I need to be in that moment to be able to do what I need to do to grow. Was there a particular moment, or was it just it sort of seeped along?
I think it seeped along, and it's a better way of putting it the way you said it. Because you don't know what you don't know when you first enter the workforce. I mean, I don't care if you were in the military or not. Like, there's still the dynamic of the people around you, the people above you, the shareholders, and you have to learn. You have to be able to play nice in the sandbox and collaborate and listen actively. And it isn't commanding an infantry unit. And if you can't grow beyond that, you shouldn't be in that role. I mean, that's as far as you're going to go. So self-limitations are exactly that. They're self-limitations. And if someone doesn't have the capacity to listen, learn, adapt, and grow, then that's as far as they're going to go. You're defined by what it takes to discourage you. And discouragement means you stop your momentum, you stop moving. So whether it's a corporate job, whether you have your own business, whatever it may be, you're going to seek your own level. And if you keep expanding your knowledge and your growth and your experiences, then you never reach that level. So that's there was several points where I learned that lesson.
But you make a really, really strong point that we're sometimes our own worst enemy. I mean, we could say this lots of different ways, but the joke is that the longest distance on the golf course is the 8 inches between our ears.
It is.
And yeah, I think it applies to corporate America. It definitely applies to sales, because if we have these non-supportive beliefs that are going to limit us to adapting and trying to get better and just being nimble enough to maneuver, we will not grow. We will create problems, and you will stagnate and lose jobs a lot of times. But I think that's a really important point. The skills that we need for a role can be taught. Like the military does that really well. They can teach skills to do things. But the thing that you do with it, that are part of your books, that you're coaching people, a lot of the time we spend coaching people, it's about what they're believing and trying to help them see if they have a slightly different perspective, they can get more wins, whatever that win looks like.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that never seems to happen in like one big poof. At least for me, I've had epiphanies, but it's something that stood out after I got smacked in the head 5 or 6 times. It's like, oh, that's what they meant, right?
Yeah.
That they,
Yeah.
whether it be sports or business, like, oh, that's what that guy meant, or that's what she meant by telling me that, or okay, now I can go forward. And if we're not willing to look at that, I think that's how we kind of sabotage our own our own growth, especially if we're not looking to grow.
Right. Right. No, I agree. I think that you can't discover something for somebody. And if people don't recognize that they have pain in their role, then they never look to soothe that pain. Right. So
Right.
the folks that I work with, when I do coaching, I always explain to them that, if I'm going to tell you how to do it, then let's call that teaching. I'm preaching, teaching you. But if I'm coaching you, so let's use a different term. I'm going to take a look at what you're doing naturally, and I'm going to try to amplify or enhance what you're doing. Even if you use the analogy of golf, even if your golf swing seems unnatural to me, if it's natural to you, and you think there's only one thing you have to modify, but you become the best golfer on the tour, then what does it matter if it's picture perfect? The outcome is really what you're thinking about. When people embrace that idea, I'm really after the outcome. And Patrick's only here to look at the process, and coaching is really looking at what I'm doing naturally. And I always try to take bite-sized pieces. Let's pick one thing and work on it. And when that becomes better, we pick the next thing, we work on it. And we move forward that way. And actually, that is something I learned in the military, because, the military gives you a good outline of how to do things, but you have to bring your own self into it. And I always work with people down in the trenches very, very well, because I carried the machine gun, I carried the M16, I carried the radio, I commanded the squad, I had done it all. So I could appreciate the pain they'd gone through, and that made me a better leader. And so that is something I did carry with me from the military into the corporate world, is that, you have to appreciate what people's pain points are in order to help them, and they have to appreciate the help you're trying to give them. If they don't want it, you can't help them.
Hey, thanks for being part of Sales and Cigars. I wanted to share a new project that we just launched. I wrote a new book called Scale Your Sales. It's written for the CEO. It's a short, powerful book that explains the 7 critical mistakes that CEOs make with their sales organization. It provides actionable steps that you can take to fix those problems in your business today. And it might even help you get out of the sales seat yourself. So appreciate you listening to Sales and Cigars. You can find this book on Amazon or wherever you buy books. Thanks. And I think that's a delicate situation.
Oh, yeah.
You use the phrase, you can't discover something for somebody, right? You can't help them want it. And the way I phrased it to people is, I can't want this more than you do, right? And that being their growth. So I've always struggled with the person who just like, I'm fine, don't need any help, leave me alone.
Yeah.
And you can poke around there, and it's like, we're not asking you to completely flip the apple cart. We're asking you to just look over here at this one thing. This will help you be more effective. It'll help you be more, and it's amazing how I think it comes down to just this idea of, I'm fine, I don't want to get better. But it's really they're afraid of something.
Yeah. Well, you're not wrong. And like my favorite story, and again, being from Chicago, I like to refer back to one of our greatest athletes, Michael Jordan. And there was nobody who wanted the championship more than Michael. And the years leading up to the Bulls' run of championships were very exciting to watch. Really compelling games against some great adversaries. And as they were on the precipice of becoming these world champions for multiple years, there's a story that Phil Jackson tells where Phil Jackson, the coach, kept saying to Michael, who's open? Who's the open man? And Michael took the team upon his shoulders, and Michael kept trying to score, and Michael kept getting shut down. And every time there was a timeout or a break, Phil would say, Michael, who's the open man? And he had the mentality, give me the ball. I desire this. Finally, one time, Michael says, John Paxson's open. He says, okay. Didn't tell him what to do, just made Michael recognize, you have a team around you. John Paxson's open. So Michael then began to drive the lane, get 4 people on him, throw the ball back to Pax, 3-pointer, and something opened up inside of Michael Jordan. His mind opened up that, oh my gosh, the path forward has to do with making the other leaders around me leaders. There's not followers on this team. There's other leaders. That recognition, now, that it's not that Michael Jordan doesn't know this. In the heat of the moment, what you're doing naturally is not helping us win a championship. And it's not helping you with anything. That's what you desire. So nobody could discover that for him. Phil Jackson just kept asking, who's the open man? He couldn't say, Michael, Pax is open. Let's design this play. You charge in, they cover you, you throw it back. He couldn't have done that.
He could have, but he was a good enough coach and a good enough psychologist to know that he couldn't do that.
Correct. Right? Correct. And so because he discovers this, he can go on to other teams like the Lakers and do the magic that he does, because it's not magic, but it's allowing people to discover something. The value that comes out of somebody else's learned lesson on your team is more valuable than anything you could ever teach. And that's the power of influence. And that's really what leadership is. And that's really what effective sales is understanding that you can influence others to understand how you see their situation, but you can't do it till they're ready to see it.
Yeah. And sometimes people in a development role or a coaching role, we lack the patience to give them that space because of other factors going on.
Absolutely.
But the other thing is, right, so I grew up in the Detroit area. So when Jordan figured this out, John Daly and Isaiah Thomas and the Pistons, were like, oh, shit.
Yeah, that was a great team to watch. Yeah.
They were great teams to watch, go against each other. I think there was, despite the antics, there was respect.
Absolutely.
But it was a time that there were leaders all over that floor, right? And there were a couple of followers, at least on the Pistons. They weren't really leaders, but there's talent everywhere, and they just need to figure out how to work it together. And that's Daly's job and Jackson's job to pull that together. And that's a great story and really, really powerful. But sometimes when we're dealing with a sales team, we don't have that talent, right? We don't have the professionalism of all of 5, 10, 12 guys that are all trying to get to the ring or get to the championship. And sometimes they don't even have that on those teams, right? Those guys don't care. And that's correct. That's the challenge. And that's, it's really the coach's responsibility to figure that out. And that's a really great lesson. So you wrote the books, and the thing that attracted me to this conversation was Sell the Difference. Why? Like, I wrote a book, and I know why I wrote it, but what motivated you? Like, what was your driver there?
Well, a lot of it came down to the sales teams I had led in the past, and just a culmination of, helping others, again, go through this process of becoming better than they even thought they were themselves. I enjoyed it. It's flat out, I enjoyed it. So I enjoyed the coaching and the development of my sales teams. I also I coached my daughter's basketball team from when she was kindergarten up through a travel team in high school. I learned more about leadership and sales from coaching little girls in kindergarten all the way through. And that's so, funny. I think you can draw lessons. If you're paying attention, your life is presented to you to give you lessons to make you better along the way. And so I really embraced the idea of servant-minded leadership. And that's what got me going with Sell the Difference. Because it is about sales, it is about profits, but it is about customer satisfaction, client satisfaction. And so my whole thing is if you can sell from the customer's point of view, and you can solve the problems that are on their mind or they're not even aware they have in their mind, then you've created for yourself a category of one. So imagine if you compete with nobody. That's the goal. Now, you'll make your upper six figures from reading this book, but it's not a get rich quick. It is a process. Because like you mentioned, the big majority of salespeople are not world-class athletes. They're not at that caliber. They might not even want to be in sales. They might not have even had training. People have gotten rid of onboarding in their corporations. So you imagine a sales force that they maybe are bringing with them habits they have from their previous parts of their life that don't fit into this culture, and then they repeat that. So this is really taking you back to a framework of listen to understand and approach things from the customer's point of view. And there's a lot of strategy that I break into pieces that help amplify what people are doing well and help give ideas to people who maybe aren't even doing that at all. So it stemmed from having sales teams that became better than they thought they could become. And to this day, 30 years later, these folks stay in touch with me and talk to me about how I influenced their career. And I thought, this would be a good thing to bring out to the world. And that my wife actually encouraged me, you need to write something because you've helped a lot of people and this could have a bigger reach. So that's what got me going.
That's awesome. Those moments that a salesperson calls you, it could be like while you're working with them, it could be a couple of years later, but those are the moments. Like, we all want to get paid. That's important. But that's a form of compensation that I don't know how you put a dollar amount on. When somebody calls you up and say, we were working on that thing. Yep. Well, I tried it. Yeah. And it worked. And the conversation flowed, and they're so excited, right? That and then now they're in, and they're going to be able to, they're going to be able to grow. Like, I've had that happen to me when I've had like a really shitty week, and the sales guy calls me on Thursday evening on his way home from a week on the road, and he's all excited. And it just fixes the whole thing for me. It's like, oh, that's why I do this.
It's funny because back in the day, we had 8-track players, and then when they moved to cassette players, right? So my sales team, we just had Friday morning meetings, right? That's what we call it, Friday morning meeting. And we would play Brian Tracy's sales tapes on a cassette. So we graduated from 8-tracks, and we would listen, and then we'd stop and we'd talk about how that applied to our jobs, what we did. And I would do this with my sales team. They take notes, they go out and they do things. And it wasn't a Monday morning kickoff. It was just Fridays because, that's what worked. And it kept people in a more productive mode. I bought them breakfast. And so they got to the office early on a Friday. So 30 years later, a salesperson who he's, a multi-million-dollar producer at the company he's at now, and he calls me, I answer the phone, I don't know the number, and I recognize his voice. And he says, best manager I ever had. I'm like, John, what's going on? And he's like, I still have all my notes from our Friday morning meetings. And he's like, I still use that. You taught me the 3-step sales approach. And I'm like, holy cow, that's great. I'm glad to hear it. He goes, no, I wanted to call you. I wanted to thank you because I've made a great living because of you. I think he would have done well without me, but it was really, like you said, it was a nice thing for him to say, made me feel like, wow, that's why I go to work every day.
Yep. But it also says something about his character, right? He didn't have to pick up that phone. He could have had that thought and let it go.
Absolutely.
But he felt compelled to make that call.
Yeah.
And that's the connection. That's the power of what we do. So like we'll have this stuff in the show notes, but where's the best place for somebody to go grab the book? Amazon? We can help. Mr.
No,
Basil?
I don't work through Amazon. So the hardcover books are self-published. You go to pksolutionsgroup.com. That's my website. And there's a book about differentiation in sales called Sell the Difference. And then there's a book about differentiation in leadership called Create the Difference. And then the audiobooks, I have links on my website or any platform where you can get an audiobook. Both of those books are on audiobook. And then my newest audiobook is called Clear Leader, Kind Leader. And it's a very short leadership book. It's under $7. You can get it on Spotify, you can get it on Google Play, you can get it on Chirp, wherever you go for your audiobooks. So if you prefer to read a book, you got it in hardcover. If you prefer to listen to it, then we have them on audiobook as well.
You have a bundle too, right? In there?
Yeah, I've got a bundle package. So if people want to buy both the leadership and the sales book, they can get it. And if they message me, I'll get them a coupon code so they can get a discount on the bundled set. Yeah.
Awesome. So folks, if you're out there, I it's in my queue. I honestly I haven't read it yet, but it's queued up for me to read. So I'm looking forward to that. So if somebody has a desire, they just message you on the website and you'll hook them up with a code.
They actually go to the website. They can buy it right there. They can buy it right there, and then it'll ship to them. If they want the coupon code, they can message me through through Contact Us, or if you contact me, the best way to contact me or get in touch with me would be on LinkedIn. Just go to my LinkedIn profile, send me a message, say you heard this on Sales and Cigars, and you'd like the coupon code to get the bundled set. I'll get it to them.
Awesome. So there's a benefit of listening to the podcast, folks.
Absolutely. One of these days, one of your guests will say the book to read is one of my books. It'll come full circle.
I'm working on an episode where I talk about some of the books that influenced me, and I have a couple of books that I've had as authors that are guests. That not all of them, but there's a couple that I'll have included, and I think yours might be one of those. That
That'd be
I just
great.
talk about. Here's some resources that if you're sales and you're trying to put good stuff in your brain while you're driving or while you're sitting around drinking a beer, here's a list of books to do that. And
Absolutely, that'd be
I
great.
think there's a ton of books, in my ebooks and things that I have out there that I recommend for people. But I think I'm about doing an episode like that. So
Perfect.
last question, Patrick, past or present relationship with cigars?
So I got a funny story. I don't smoke cigars. I don't smoke anything really. But
Good for you.
in my days of golfing with clients, I had a client. He did like to smoke cigars, and so we always made sure we had cigars for this gentleman. And he would smoke the cigar, throw it on the ground, hit his ball on the golf course, pick up the cigar, and keep going. And the funny story is that they had sprayed fertilizer, and he got an allergic reaction, and his lips swelled up so big. But it didn't happen quickly. It happened over the course of like 3 or 4 hours. So we kept looking, and I thought he was having a stroke because it was getting numb. And finally I looked, and his lips were swollen so big. I said, I think you're having an allergic reaction to something. And it was the fertilizer in the car. So he got some Benadryl. He was fine. But that's my funny story with cigars.
I have not witnessed that, but that's one of the things that when I see a guy toss the cigar on the ground, I'm like, dude, like here, and I give him this little thing I have in my pocket where they stick it in the ground and it holds.
Yeah, it's like a
cigar.
tea for your cigar. Yeah.
And there's lots of ways of doing it, right? You can clip it to the golf cart, you can put that thing down, but putting a cigar on you have the fertilizer issue, you have dampness, you got birds
Geese.
peeing, and and you never know what's running around a golf course, right? And people are walking all over the place, and you're going to pick that up and put it in your mouth, and you usually only have to say that once to somebody, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, give me one of those." And
Right.
I always had an extra one in my bag to share with somebody.
Give somebody.
Because it's but that's awful. But Benadryl hooked him up and he was good.
Hooked him up. Yeah, you should put your logo on that and give it to people.
Yeah, I
a
haven't
good
played golf in
conversation.
about 5 years,
Oh.
but that would have been a smart thing to do. So,
Our little giveaway. Yeah.
Patrick, I appreciate you taking the time here. I'm gonna look forward to reading the book, and we'll talk soon. Thanks.
Always a pleasure, Walter. Thanks.
Thanks for being part of another fun episode of Sales and Cigars. Let me ask you a question. Are you tired of struggling to hire sales talent that's going to move the needle for your company? Well, maybe you should attend my Sales Hiring Secrets program and discover the number one mistake that business owners are making with hiring sales talent in their organization. The details are in the show notes. Click on the page. It gives you all the details. It gives you everything you need to know to solve the problem of sales talent on your team. Thanks.